We are live. Good to see you today, my EOS Podcast friends. We have a really cool show for you today. Today we have Alex from Equilibrium. Also, we have Thomas from Oracleize, which is now called Provable. We're talking about stablecoins. We're talking about EOS, and Josh is also on the show. And we are going to just dig deep into stablecoins here and Equilibrium and see what's going on. So, Alex, welcome to the show. Thomas, Josh, welcome to the show. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Alex.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you for having us here. We're excited to hop on your podcast. And let me say a few words about myself. I'm Alex. I'm a fintech crypto entrepreneur. I have graduated as an engineer in applied mathematics, 13 years ago. And since that time, I'm mostly focused on, some technological projects, and doing, some stuff around architectural side of things and technical side of things. Mostly all the projects I've been involved in. Last 6 years, I'm mostly focused on fintech space. I'm literally stuck in, crypto since 2016, where we co-founded Changelly. And now I'm really keen on decentralized finance and decentralized applications across multiple blockchains. Currently, I'm CEO of Equilibrium. It's our project based on EOS blockchain. So basically, it's decentralized stablecoin asset-backed. We'll highlight all the specifics a little bit later. So I will pass the word back to my colleague Josh, who is our chief counsel. He'll speak for himself.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Brandon, for having us on the show. Real pleasure to be here. So my name's Josh Goodbody. I'm, as Alex mentioned, the Chief Counsel for the Equilibrium framework. I guess probably out of the bunch here, I'm the most boring one. I'm a lawyer by training. I spent the last decades doing my time in various institutions like Credit Suisse, State Street, JP Morgan, really working on financial markets regulation and derivatives. So I made my first foray into the blockchain space in, I think it was 2016, working at a fintech company in the commodity space. And from there, I moved into the exchange space, taking up the role, which I actually currently have now as well, the role as Global General Counsel for Huobi's sales and institutional business. So what I've been doing over the last couple of years has been helping businesses kind of scale from a regulatory and a strategic licensing perspective, helping businesses navigate around the very difficult regulatory sphere, which is extremely unclear, which is unfortunately quite fraught with opaqueness and difficulties, helping them kind of grow and scale their business. So I met with Alex at the end of last year, and the Equilibrium Framework project has really, piqued my interest. And I've always been a huge proponent of stablecoins. So it was really a marriage made in heaven there. So yeah, I joined the project a couple of months ago, getting really stuck into all aspects of the business. Pleasure to be here to talk about that today. So Thomas, I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks, Josh. Hello, Brandon. Thank you for having me here today. So my name is Thomas Bertani. I've been involved with the blockchain space since 2012. So it has been approximately 7 years now. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been starting 3 companies in the blockchain sphere, and Oracleize is one of these. So I'm the founder and CEO of Oracleize. Oracleize has recently rebranded to Provable, and what we have been focusing on is basically providing blockchain applications with like a tool to reach out to the internet so that they can be fed in with external data. This is like critical to enable a variety of use cases, and we are happy and really excited to have partnered with Equilibrium, since Equilibrium is in strong need for external data, and they have chosen to use Oracleize as an Oracle service to satisfy that need.
Fantastic. Well, all of you, welcome to the show, and I love to hear the backgrounds. We've got some blockchain legends here, so it should be a fun show. Just to kick it off, and then we'll transition into obviously stablecoins and everything that Equilibrium's doing. What to you guys is the most interesting that's going on in EOS right now? You can go ahead, Alex.
Let me step in here. From my perspective, what is the most interesting is that, in blockchain space overall, is that a lot of decentralized finance applications appearing on the market. They're related to lending, to some other cool stuff. And actually, from my perspective, there are a lot of applications are coming to EOS blockchain as well. For example, I can highlight here the Predict, for example, which is the very new thing. It's I would say it's similar to Algor, right? And actually, they will be building the prediction markets. I guess I know about several teams working on some decentralized lending platforms based on EOS as well. And for sure, what's the most exciting that eventually the Rex has came out. That's very good. Cool stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see, like you're saying, all the financial tools that are starting to pop up. And I was just talking with Attic Lab, Serge from Attic Lab, and he was big on he's in the financial end of EOS, and he has an exchange and he was making open source banking software. He's really interested in that, and something he talks about is having every community or basically as many communities as possible, and every state for sure having their own stable coin. So many stable coins and a lot to decentralize the whole ecosystem and make it more resilient. So stable coins are one of the very needed and hot commodity or topics right now. So that's cool. So that's an easy transition right into Equilibrium. You guys are building a stable coin. So why don't you just give an overview of general overview of Equilibrium, what it is and how it works?
Right. Yeah. So Equilibrium is the framework for generation of EOSDT stablecoins. So it's basically the technology for users based on EOS blockchain, so that any community member can approach the smart contracts, pledge the collateral of their digital assets. We are starting with EOS cryptocurrency and generate on their terms certain chunk of EOSDT stablecoins. Right. The purpose of the framework is actually to maintain the collateralization level of users' position and to balance supply and demand of the EOSDT stablecoins in order to maintain the peg to USD. So basically, the EOSDT stablecoin is pegged to one USD at all the time. And what's the most exciting, actually, since it's decentralized stablecoin, you can always inspect how many assets, particularly, is backing the whole supply of stablecoins, right? So compared to other stablecoin models, which actually are criticized for their intransparency, where these stablecoins are backed by some physical assets sitting on some sacred accounts. I would say decentralized stablecoins are really exciting asset class, which is upcoming to the market. When you can be sure at every single moment that every single stablecoin is backed by some asset settled into the smart contracts. So that is the most exciting point.
Yeah, and right now, it looks like there's a running tally showing what you have collateralized, and right now it looks like you have over 1.6 million EOS that's collateralized, which is over $8 million. This is from your website showing that it's collateralized with 3 million EOSDT generated, so 275% collateralized. So that's cool. That it's good to have that transparency, because I guess we probably don't want to say any big names of stable coins here, but there's other stable coins that basically are operating as a fractional reserve, and aren't as transparent as that. And that's what, that adds a lot of FUD to the market. And, and if people are actually using, there's this risk of ruin that no one wants, this risk of ruin. And so when you're using a stable coin that, that has that risk of ruin just kind of in the distance, it makes people nervous. So I really, I'm really big on this transparency that you guys are showing there. So that's cool.
Yeah, Brandon, I think transparency is one of the core themes for the Equilibrium framework. And in a way, entering the market at this moment in time, we've been quite fortunate to learn a lot of the hard lessons that other similar or previous projects have had to learn. And those lessons can be, structural, for example, transparency being right up there at the top of the list. They can be regulatory, i.e. what not to do in terms of creating a stable coin that may or may not have regulatory triggers attached to it. So the timing for us, I think, has been pretty excellent in that we've been able to take the best that we've seen on the market in terms of various approaches, various strategies, and learn from the difficult lessons that quite a lot of these other stablecoin issuers or protocols or frameworks have suffered from. So, there's an enormous amount out there of success stories, and the industry itself has, progressed a huge amount in the last 12 months, let alone the last 6 months. But also there have been a lot of, should we say, more controversial things that have been happening in the market relating to stable coins that, don't really help the cause, they more hinder them. So, there are all kinds of things in the regulatory space that we could talk about that aren't particularly interesting, but are actually really important. And, what we're really trying to do in the Equilibrium framework is avoid those kind of thorny issues that really create, consumer doubts. They create issues with exchanges. They really hinder the kind of mass adoption that we really think is necessary to take the stablecoin industry really to the next level. And we have been building this behind the scenes in a way that really helps try and mitigate those those core issues.
Yeah. What would you say? I know that we don't want to get too deep into regulatory issues here, but what would be the biggest takeaway or kind of the main focus of your team being regulatory compliant?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at other stable coins out there in the market, principally the ones that are fiat backed, those trigger a large amount of regulatory issues in most jurisdictions. And what do I mean by that? So let's take North America. In North America, any fiat-backed stablecoin is frequently going to be considered either some kind of electronic money or some kind of electronic instrument that represents real money behind the scenes. In Europe, it would be covered under something called the Payment Services Directive. So it's really hard for a fiat-backed asset to get itself outside of that regulatory trigger. So the benefit of the Equilibrium framework by design really is that it isn't collateralized by fiat currency. It's able to enjoy the benefit associated with fiat currency, i.e. the lack of volatility and the stable nature of the asset. But it really avoids triggering all of the quite nasty regulatory burdens that come with being collateralized by fiat. So that for us was, a really positive thing to see as we developed the project, that we could quite comfortably build something that we believe is outside of the perimeter of most of the onerous regulation that applies to the stablecoin industry. Not avoiding it because we think regulation is bad. That's a really important thing to stress. Regulation for regulation's sake is actually very positive for the industry. But when you create an asset inadvertently that triggers all of these regulatory concerns, you tend to find the adoption of it is significantly hindered. So
we've been able to kind of learn from that lesson quite significantly. So we're pleased to build something that is thankfully slightly less encumbered than some of the other projects you might see out there at the moment.
Yeah, that is great timing. It's and there, like you said, regulation is not bad in and of itself. It's just when it kind of is in the way instead of helping. And it sounds like you guys came around at a really good time here. And especially when there's enough transparency, then you don't need as much regulation. So that, you guys are kind of finding that sweet spot there, and, getting back on the transparency, being able to see how much is collateralized. And then I believe also that if the custody of coins doesn't necessarily change hands, it stays in a smart contract, and the framework doesn't have access to the underlying assets. So that kind of lends to the transparency as well. So yeah, if you want to talk a little bit more about how that actually works, Alex, with the equilibrium framework.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually a very important point regarding the exact storage of underlying assets, since they're really settled on smart contracts, and at any time it can be inspected how many of them are currently there. I would say here that another important thing is actual decentralization, right? So decentralization is also it's one of the points for like more for like regulation, and from technical perspective, we also staying for more decentralization within the equilibrium framework as well. So it means that we have the governance contracts within the framework, which is actually used for making important decisions regarding crucial parameters of the framework itself. And basically, there are utility tokens within the framework called NUT, not native utility tokens, which can be used by community for voting for some crucial parameters, right? Actually, we have on the roadmap delegation of set codes to this like the governance contract for the community to decide whether to deploy a new version of contract to the mainnet or not. So it's very important side of things of decentralization.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think the kind of voter apathy in EOS.io itself is an issue? It kind of caught people by surprise. People thought people would be more interested in the on-chain governance on the governance than they are. How do you see that playing into a stablecoin where you're wanting the community to get involved and know what's going on and vote for things?
So, I mean, in terms of governance, we are building up our own governance contracts. I mean, we facilitate all the governance process within the framework itself. Actually, we also have some thoughts on how to manage things regarding decentralization on the governance contracts. I will highlight them a little bit further when we'll share more plans on development. Yeah. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Well, so let's talk a little bit about how the supply and demand work of the stablecoin, like how the nuts and bolts of that work.
Yeah,
so
if
the USD price were to change, if the USD price changes, kind of how that works.
Yeah, I mean, all the stablecoins, all EOSDT stablecoins are placed into circulation by the community by culturalizing their digital assets like EOS cryptocurrency. And actually, users are committing to a certain critical level of culturalization so that their position can go below this level in case if it goes due to volatility of underlying assets. Actually, the position would be liquidated with the liquidation penalty, right? So this liquidation penalty expectedly will incentivize users to maintain the collateralization level of their position above critical. Right.
Okay.
So currently the liquidation penalty is 20%.
Okay. And is there a market for people to come in and to basically buy those liquidation? Is there an opportunity there for arbitrators or something?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, there is the liquidator contract within the system where the liquidated collateral would be transferred in case of liquidation of particular position. And there is obviously the opportunity for arbitrators to buy out this collateral with a discount. And current discount for liquidated collateral is 5% actually. So we see here the huge incentive for arbitrators to come over to the framework.
Okay.
And yeah, I forgot to mention that current critical level for the position is 170%. So it's pretty conservative from our perspective. Yeah. So.
Okay. Very good. And so this might be a good time to kind of to transition the basically the price feed monitors and how we know the open position, who has open positions, and how that works.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the framework constantly performs mark to market for open positions of users, and for sure we need some price feeds for underlying assets to do that mark to market. In this case, we actually utilize the external price feeds, which are delivered through trust lines by Oracle, now called Provable. We are happy to get partnered with them on these trust lines because they provide really reliable and robust service, Oracle service for external market data as well. Yeah, so I mean. We rely on Oracle for market prices, for price feeds.
Okay. Well, and so this is where Thomas comes in with Oracleize, now called Provable, which is your Oracleize price feed that monitors the open positions. And so, Thomas, you want to talk about how that works, or just a little bit about Provable itself and where you guys came from?
Yeah, so basically, as I said, I've been involved in the space for a while, and what I couldn't avoid noticing in 2015 when Ethereum was released is that people were starting to discuss decentralized applications. And one huge problem was the fact that blockchain is a walled garden. Basically, it's impossible for a blockchain application to know anything about the real world. So people were wondering about. Yeah, we may design an insurance product or a financial product or something like that, but every time there was this single point of failure in the data, the application logic was depending on. So basically, this is when we first thought about the problem of the Oracle, and this is when we started working on it. So in 2015, it was September, just 1 month, if I'm not wrong, after the Ethereum mainnet was released. We released the first prototype, and the first version of Oracleize was basically this smart contract on the blockchain, which was communicating with our services outside of the blockchain and somehow enabling the communication between the internet and the blockchain. Which was not possible before. So in the coming months and years, we refine the service by providing more and more guarantees because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where you have garbage being sent to your contract, to your smart contract, right? It will be like garbage in, garbage out. So maybe you have a perfectly safe on-chain logic, which is enforced by the blockchain, but then the input is wrong or tampered with. So if you find yourself in that situation, you may obtain a payment which is technically correct based on the input you received, but it ends being, the it ends up being the payment maybe to the wrong person. So it's really critical to have safe data being pushed to the blockchain for applications such as Equilibrium or many others that depends on real world conditions or external data that the blockchain doesn't know. It's data that is not local. So basically, this is when we started focusing on the authenticity proof concept, which is at the core of our work. So basically, the authenticity proof is just a technical solution which shows that us as an operator, we are not tampering with the data. So basically, it shows that the data we are sending to the blockchain is actually authentic and it has not been tampered with during delivery.
Okay. So if it's not tampered with during delivery, how do you verify the source that it's coming from and know that it's not tampered with prior to delivery?
That's a very good question. Actually, most data is trusted in this sense. So one of the very first applications we saw, I think it was 2016, was a smart contract on Ethereum where people could, like YouTubers, could be paid if receive money from advertisers or things like that if their video became popular enough. So basically, the input data was the number of views for the YouTube video. So if I was to ask you how many views a given YouTube video has, what I really mean is how many views does this video have according to YouTube? It's like a claim that YouTube is making. There is no way you can verify independently if this video has really been watched X number of times. So the reality is that in most cases, data is inherently trusted, and you have an external data source that is claiming something. And what you want to do is having this data on the blockchain without having them to adapt to the blockchain. So this is why you need the Oracle. You don't want every single website to adapt with EOS, adapt with Ethereum or with blockchains and push the data in consistent ways, maybe. So with some data, such as maybe the temperature of a city, it's much easier because you can have independent actors or websites or data sources that have their own independent sensors. So you can try to reach out not to one player, but maybe to 10 and aggregate the data somehow so that a malicious actor will not be able to compromise the final result. And you can choose your own aggregation logics, basically. So this is the case for temperature, but the reality is that the answer depends on the kind of data you're pushing in. So for price data, you may go to the major exchanges and get data from there. This will be actually an accurate final number, right? Because if you are looking for the price of EOS, for instance, or any token or any cryptocurrency, what we mean is what is the price on the major exchanges, because this is where most of the volume is. But it's not that easy to verify that the volume is not fake. So at the end of the day, it's still a claim of the major exchanges. Of course, they are putting some money on the table to prove that, because you could potentially, act on the exchange and withdraw money or deposit money. But it's just with, fully transparent, decentralized exchange or something like that, that you can have a final guarantee that everything is going smoothly and transparent, at least in theory. So if you had a decentralized exchange with a lot of volume on EOS, for instance, maybe Equilibrium will be able to get the data straight from the blockchain, because then it will become like a local data that the blockchain knows. But today, this is a very distant future, and most of the volume is done on very few centralized exchanges.
Yeah. So what's the plan, or how is Provable pulling data for, let's say, EOS price and USD price?
So basically what we do is giving as much flexibility as we can to the developer of the application, so they can choose who they want to trust. Since the trust line is on the data source, for instance, if you want the price of EOS, you may look for the Binance last price, right? So in that case, it will be the developer of the application on EOS reaching out to Provable saying, please get the data from the Binance API. This is what I want. We never make assumptions on the best data source or on the quality of the data, because this is really subjective. It depends on the user. It depends on the reference community, on the application, on many things. So we never choose autonomously where to get the data from. We give like the infrastructure tool for projects to make this choice themselves, communicate to us, and basically the rest is on us. So what we do is basically the delivery part and the generation of the authenticity proof. So the generation of the authenticity proof enables like applications or any third-party auditor to verify that the data is correct. Correct meaning that is the same that was reported by the data source, for example, by Binance. So it has not been tampered with by Equilibrium. It has not been tampered with by Oracle Provable, and by anyone in the middle. It's really coming from Binance. Then it's up to you to choose if you wanted to really to trust Binance or other data sources. And as I said, you can potentially choose more than one and aggregate the data so that you reduce your dependency on a single trust line.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're verifying that this data hasn't been tampered with, but they're in charge of picking the trusted source. That makes sense. So, is there specifically with Equilibrium, is the team looking to use multiple exchange APIs to pull price feeds and do an average, or what's the specific plan with where Equilibrium is going to pull price from?
Yeah, right. This very good question. So currently we are fetching the price from Crypto-Compare, and we have the price which is already aggregated from the multiple exchanges, so that we have some already medianized price. But what we really have on our roadmap is to build up some medianizer within our smart contract so that we can trigger the APIs of variety of exchanges. We're considering around 15 of them to get prices of US to USD pair from these exchanges to aggregate on the smart contracts, and then to build up some median for that. Yeah, so that's definitely on our roadmap.
Well, actually, this is something that EOS makes simplifies a lot because you can have thanks to the flexibility of WebAssembly and the like C++, for instance, you can very easily design your aggregation logic, which is something that on Ethereum was really very expensive. So this is definitely one of the advantage for also data management, data handling in the EOS context.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have to put word here regarding the overall costs of transactions on EOS. And since the cost of particular transaction is close to zero, we can fetch the prices very frequently. So currently, I guess we're fetching the prices from external market data sources like each 5 seconds or so.
Great. Right. Yeah, I know that that's one of the big oracles are one of the big questions that a lot of projects have. I was just looking at PredictIQ, and their oracles are going to need, I mean, that's going to be a huge market for oracles because they're going to need to pull who knows what kind of data, for all kinds of things. Like you said, temperatures to different sporting events, to elections, to anything people can dream up. Thomas, is that something that Provable is involved with, or is that something that, what are your thoughts on something like these like PredictIQ markets?
I mean, in general, with markets or with any decentralized mean, just prediction market to find the answer to a question, they pretty much all have the same ultimate problem. So even Augur or Gnosis, they all have the same problem, which is the fact that once the market is converging to the final result, they need somehow to understand if there is a dispute to be open or not. And typically when you want to verify on-chain a given dispute, you need somehow to have a dispute resolution method. And the dispute resolution method typically needs to get like the answer from elsewhere. So for instance, let's say you are looking for the result of a match or a game, anything. And basically what you do is like, and you enable anyone to place their bets, right? And when you approach the end of the game, what happens is that it's really easy to know the real answer, because you can go to any external website or anywhere on the internet and you can find the answer, right? So this is the input for the blockchain to tell to the contract what did really happen. So how the contract should be settled, how the dispute should be settled if there is any dispute. So this is why both Augur and Gnosis have some kind of integration with Oracleize themselves. Because at the end of the day, they still need to know what did really happen according to a trusted external data source. So it's a different use case. Decentralized prediction markets work really well for price discovery or for anything that you need to update in real time, but you don't have 100% guarantee that it's correct. While Oracleize is useful for getting data immediately on something that is well known and that belongs to an external data source. So if you want to know what's the temperature in a given city, you wouldn't really efficiently use a prediction market. If you want to know what's the price of something, well, actually a prediction market is a good bet, because by arbitrage, it's very likely that someone is has an incentive to keep the on-chain data accurate. So it really depends, and the reality is that they are like complementary services. Typically, prediction market need something like Oracleize, like a traditional Oracle, while the applications may need a prediction market or a traditional Oracle, depending on their use case and the data they are looking for.
Yeah, I mean, both these, the Oracle and the stablecoins are both huge parts of the infrastructure of all this blockchain moving forward. It's exciting to be talking about this and seeing it happen. And there's been so much development in the last 6 months. It's just wild. So what's the roadmap, or what's next for Equilibrium, Alex? What are the plans for the future, and where are you now?
Yeah, I mean, we currently have certain traction to the date. Firstly, we are in production on mainnet, and as you mentioned, we have already $8 million worth of EOS already socialized on the framework. We are really excited about this now, and we also have done some work regarding listings of our stablecoin EOSDT on exchanges. Currently, we are listed on several decentralized exchanges on EOS, including EOSDT, DEX EOS, and some others, and also in talks with other exchanges. And what's the most exciting, we have got the EOSDT stablecoins along with NOT tokens listed on HitBTC. So yeah, that's one of the major exchanges, I guess, right? So also we have done the integration with the mobile version of Lynx wallet. I think they also announced that in their social media channels. So you guys can get hands-on Equilibrium over there and on our website, actually, EOSDT.com. Yeah. So in terms of our plans, yeah, we have a certain roadmap in terms of development. I would tell you about the upcoming things within the coming month. So we are going to we're actually preparing for major updates of the smart contracts, which actually will lead to BP voting implemented on the framework. It means that actually MUT holders would be allowed to vote for the list of block producers for whom we will stake, some portion of the EOS collateral locked in the system. So we are actually one of the first decentralized applications of decentralized finance, which facilitates collateral, so-called collateral superfluidity. Yeah. So what else? Also, we are doing a lot of development on the front end side of things. We're actually are going to roll out interface for voting, some set of monitoring tools so that users can monitor in real time the framework utilization level, see some diagrams on that, which positions are open. Yeah, so lots of stuff. Actually, we are struggling to bring it together and to complete some sort of roadmap with particular milestones. And actually, that would be one of the, I guess, biggest announcements in terms of Equilibrium within the coming months.
Great. And you mentioned there real briefly about BPs staking collateral, or the community voting on BPs to stake collateral. Can you dig a little deeper into what that is, how that's going to work?
So basically, it would be so we actually have computed the model for the framework, according to which there is a certain level of reservation for the collateral. I mean, the minimum reservation ratio, according to this model, is around 59%. So that means that in further we can operate with 41% of the collateral to stake it for block producers, for example. And currently we're kicking off with the reservation ratio of 90%, so that we can take 10% of the collateral for block producers. So it means that actually the community, the nut holders, or even some users who would get the nuts from secondary markets, for example, they can vote for a list of block producers for whom the Equilibrium framework will stake the portion of collateral. So currently, if we rely on the current levels of collateralization of the framework, it would be around $800,000 worth of EOS. So it's, I mean, it's impactful amount, I would say.
And you also mentioned the Lynx wallet integration. How far along is that, and what's that look like in the wallet?
Yeah, I mean, we have gateway for the users to generate stablecoins. You can actually, it's like decentralized web application, so you can try it on our website, EOSDT.com. So it's available on both on desktop version and on mobile as well. So you can log into your Lynx wallet, and you can find us at Explore tab. There you will see Equilibrium, so that you can pledge your EOS directly from your Lynx wallet into Equilibrium, and to generate EOSDT stablecoins directly to your EOS account.
Cool. So if people are speculating on price, they can go put some of their EOS and tag it to the dollar, huh? So what you mentioned the nuts token. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can cover the statements regarding its utility, how it's actually utilized within the system. NUT NUT tokens would be used within the system both as internal currency and governance token. So it means that users would be paying accrued fees for their positions and NUT tokens. Also, we actually allow arbitrators to cover like to buy out liquidated collateral partially with NUT tokens as well. And once we acquire these tokens to the framework back, we actually will get them burned. So the supply of the NUT tokens will be reduced because of that. And another important utility for the token is actually participation in governmental process. So it is that you and NUT holders can vote for crucial system parameters as fees, their values, and actually for mentioned list of block producers as well.
Right. And how is this would you guys like to get into how the NUT token will be distributed and what that looks like?
I guess,
sure.
Josh will cover that.
Yeah, happy to cover that. Yeah. So I think the approach that we're taking with the NUT distribution is organic as a starting point. So there are really two methods that we're going to be doing this via. One is a public method, where we're really calling that, I suppose, a public sale. And what that means is via secondary markets, you'll be able to log on to an exchange or to some kind of liquidity providing venue, where you'll be able to really just purchase it there on the secondary market. So we're working quite closely with a number of market makers to get the NUT token far and wide, get it as listed in as many venues as possible, so people can start purchasing that on the secondary market. And then the second method is really a private sale. Now this is something that we're slowly working our way towards. We're certainly not rushing. We're making sure that we're taking our time to work out what that strategy will be. But as with any kind of governance-related asset, the distribution of it has to be measured and appropriate. So in the private sale, we'll be working with a number of stakeholders there who are interested in being part of the framework and part of the governance process. Anyone who purchases on a private sale basis is of course going to be doing it subject to a lockup period. So we've been kind of building these checks and balances to make sure that both sale methods, whether it's public or private, are done in the right way, and are positive for the overall growth and development of the framework itself. So the overall supply that we have of NUT token is 10 million at the outset. As I said, we're going to be taking an organic approach to this, so it will be slowly over time we'll be introducing it into the market. A key thing for me to probably highlight here is that we're not going to be doing any airdrops. We don't think that's particularly positive for the community. We want, again, organic growth. And any undistributed tokens that remain within the framework, i.e. tokens that haven't been sold or distributed, they're not applicable within the governance framework. So, where they're sitting in reserve with the framework, you cannot use them towards voting, for example. And we think that's quite important to have a healthy and stable, fair governance process. So, yeah, as a recap, we're just kicking that off. I think we're going to be making some more, should we say, large announcements, exciting announcements over the coming weeks about that. But we've got two channels we'll be working. The public sale period is open. You're able to buy that on the secondary market right now, and specifically at HIT BTC. Of course, we're going to be broadening that network out over the coming weeks. And we're just kicking off the private sale process. So right at the beginning of the process, and so far it's been quite an exciting journey.
Right. So do you guys, Alex, do you have anything to add as far as the roadmap or kind of where you guys are at with stablecoin altogether?
Yeah, so I mean, we are actually working on also business development side of things, talking to lots of projects in this space, figuring out the ways how we could collaborate. For sure, there are some exciting announcements are coming up in this month and later on in our journey. Yeah, so we are also intending to roll out our completed roadmap with all like milestones, what we are going to achieve in more distant perspective. But now we're working on that also on the basis of the community feedback. And if you guys who are listening to us, watching the podcast, can provide us with some initial feedback on the equilibrium framework, that would be very helpful to us. And actually, they're very precise in terms of getting to details on the feedback we get from the community.
Cool. Well, as we start to wind down here, let's have some kind of final thoughts on the future of both oracles, markets, stablecoins. What do you think this looks like? Because we're clearly in the very beginning stages of some shifts there as far as these tools just popping up. What do you think it looks like down the road? Bigger picture for not just stable coins, but just prediction markets and everything in general.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick off on that. I think as an interesting theme for the future, decentralized finance is something that is increasingly being demonstrated to be something that we need to explore even further than we already have. There have been some fantastic first attempts at decentralizing elements of finance, whether that is decentralized exchanges that allow users to hold their assets within their own position, not exposed to centralized exchange structures. Those kind of themes I think will be really powerful in the future. They are quite nebulous themes. They're very new. They intimidate people because they're so bold. But I think the more we talk about them and the more we expand on them and explore them and really articulate why they are, in the benefit of all kinds of stakeholders, whether you're someone who holds Bitcoin or someone who, trades your company's capital on an exchange, that the power of having decentralized finance is self-evident, and I think it's going to continue into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. That decentralized finance is such a big idea, and like you said, very nebulous, hard to wrap your mind around it. It takes like being in it every day and it just continually kind of looking at angles, and finally pieces start to fall together. Like, oh wow, this is very big. But if you just go to someone, if I go to one of my friends and I start talking to them about decentralized finance and they're not familiar with blockchain, it's just it's almost like their eyes glaze over. It's too big of an idea. It's hard to understand, but it's very important.
It is.
Yeah, that's why
the more you talk about it with people and explain and articulate what it actually means, all of the misnomers and the kind of the negative rumors that people hear about decentralized means unsafe and all those kind of false news slowly start getting washed away. So, as a community, we've got to talk about it more, I think.
Mm-hmm. Keep bringing it up. Yeah, what'd you have to add, Thomas?
Yeah, what I wanted to say is that basically, so both services such as Equilibrium or Provable itself, they have like critical components, but the end user shouldn't really see the complexity of those frameworks. So something like EOS is going in a very interesting direction towards usability. So for instance, we saw in last few days the release with 1.8 of like some features that go in that direction. I was already quite surprised at the beginning to see that on EOS you can have like the smart contract, the contract itself paying for the RAM, which is an improvement compared to ETH, to Ethereum for usability. Now that you can do that also for CPU and net, is like a huge change for usability. It means that the end user doesn't need to care about all this complexity, and it's a very interesting direction because going forward, it enables those components to be hidden 100%. So you don't see them emerging, but still they are enabling those new use cases, and the end user really cares just about the final interface they interact with. So this is really what I think it should be like.
Yeah, that abstracting away of the blockchain is just such an important step, and that's what we're going to hopefully see a lot more of in 2019. But the thought that a user on their cell phone needs to deal with RAM and CPU, it's like that's almost like that's something so clearly for developers to be taking care of. It's not an end user thing. So yeah, seeing that disappear is just such a huge step for just how friendly the EOS blockchain is getting. So good point. Yeah.
Absolutely. I would also add here that there are way more applications are upcoming to the market, and actually all these decentralized things are making the market more complete in terms of decentralized finance and decentralization overall. I assume that there would be way more stablecoins coming to the market, decentralized and not decentralized. But I would not say that we're competing somehow. We're just making the market more complete, as I told before. Right? So yeah, I mean, we're excited to be in this journey with all the community members.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Alex, let people know, and then Thomas, let people know the best places to find you guys on the socials for Equilibrium and for Provable, and any kind of asks of the audience or anywhere they can go to follow the progress.
Yeah, I mean, guys, we will appreciate your feedback on Equilibrium and on EOSDT stablecoins. You can find us at our website, EOSDT.com. There you will find all the links to our social media profiles, including Telegram group and our Twitter, Reddit, Medium, whatever. You can also go to our blog. We post there a lot of content regarding Equilibrium. It might be interesting as well, since we're covering lots of stuff, including technical side of things and some things from legal perspective. Yeah, so
great. Well, we'll put those in the show notes. Go ahead, Thomas.
Yeah, as for Provable, you can find all the information on the website, which is provable.xyz. And starting from there, you can go to the documentation, our social media channels, or also on GitHub, where we have many code examples and material for developers. There are more than 1,000 projects that are currently using our framework. So you can actually just go on GitHub and look for Oracleize or Provable, and you will find many third-party resources, examples, or projects based on it. So these are good third-party material as well.
Fantastic. Well, on my end, my EOS podcast friends, this is a podcast, not just a YouTube show. So make sure to listen to the podcast so you can do it while you're driving, or if you're doing yard work or something. That's why there's the podcast version. Also, I have a proxy, Mr. Happy Money proxy, and I vote for block producers that are transparent, building the community, and empowering the community. So I do a lot of research. I've almost got 100 episodes of the EOS podcast. So I've talked to most of the block producers that I vote for and dug pretty deep into what they're really doing. So if you need a good proxy, Mr. Happy Money proxy. And Josh, did you have any final words?
Yeah, I think it's a real pleasure to be here, Brandon. As Alex said, we're extremely keen to get as much feedback as possible on the Equilibrium framework. We've got a pretty active Telegram channel where people are firing all kinds of complex and technical questions at us at all hours of the day. So I'd really, convey the message out there to the public. Do get involved, do reach out and talk to us, whether you have questions about the technicals or questions about, what the community is saying, and potential use cases. If you've got ideas, we'd love to hear them. We are open and accessible, just like the rest of the EOS community. So please reach out and say hi.
Great. Well, thank you, Josh. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Alex, and Equilibrium and Provable, two great projects for the EOS community to look into. And that's the show for today. And thank you, my EOS podcast friends. Cheers.
The money is not the prime asset in life. time is, and your time is just